be focusing on how to create some, well, features and work surfaces that we're going to be working with and projecting objects to, all in the creation of a pretty cool looking flying saucer. So you're going to have to take this information and use it for our upcoming projects for some of the design components that you'll be creating. So to create this fantastic flying saucer, we're first going to start with a sketch, and we'll work on the XY plane. Again, remember, green is Y, red is X, blue is Z. And so we'll flip over to the front view on the big view cube. And in this case, we're going to draw a line straight up and down on the Y-axis. And what's nice about this is we'll go ahead and choose OK. We'll highlight this line and right mouse click, and we'll make it a construction line. Notice that there's a switch to go ahead and make it a normal or construction line, and we'll make it a construction line so it's dotted. We'll then do an outline of our spaceship. And the spaceship itself will start here on the bottom. We'll go straight. We'll come up. We'll do a straight edge here. Come up vertical. Do a straight edge here. And come back. And notice that it basically stopped. But I always like to close my own object. And the reason why I do that is notice that when I close my object, it shades it so I know that it's a closed entity. We could add some dimensions in here. It's not that critical for our design, but we'll do it anyways. So 1 inch is fine. We'll do an angle here. We're going to do a 160-degree angle. And we're going to do about 0.75. And the distance all the way from the center line to there is going to be 3 inches. And the distance from here, from the construction plane to there, we want that to be 0. So we want to actually bring it back to the zeroing point. Though it's not that critical. Oh, it's going to fail because I don't have this dimensioned to the construction plane. I bet that's the issue. And let's go ahead and delete this. Not everything works out the exact way that we would like. And so I can try to dimension this and see if it'll pull it back to the 0 location. We'll see what happens here. Yeah, see, it's not going to allow us to do that. I should have dimensioned that to the 0 before we started. But here nor there, we'll continue our dimensioning environment, and we're going to go ahead and do a dimension overall. Sometimes it doesn't always work exactly the way we'd like. We'll do this as 3 inches, and the dimension angle from here to there. Okay, remember, opposite angles are exactly the same. We're going to set this at 135. And so we've got an interesting shape, to say the least. Even though it's not directly in the center line, we'll be okay. If I choose cancel, I may be able to just drag and move it back to the center line and get it close. So it may not be exactly on the center line, but it's going to be close. And again, I just canceled it, dragged it, and moved it to the location. We can finish our sketch because we're going to go ahead and revolve the shape. And before I revolve, I'm going to go back into 3-dimensional mode. And so we'll revolve. It wants to know what the axis is. It knows the object because that's what was shaded. So the axis is going to be our construction line. And the profile. And the axis. There we go. So I needed to select both the profile and the axis on this, and it's going to be a 360-degree rotation. So now we've got this cool looking flying saucer-like object. Okay, a couple of things. We're going to work a lot with construction planes, And that's the idea behind this video, is to kind of soften the concept of using construction planes. And the first construction plane we're going to place, because when you hit the down arrow here, you get overwhelmed. We're actually just going to place an axis. And so we're going to put an axis in the center, and we can pick any one of the rounded surfaces here. And that rounded surface is selected, and we don't get an axis until we choose the OK button. And you can see there is a green axis in the middle here, and it's going to be more prevalent towards the bottom, but there is an axis through our part now, just so you're aware. Alright, so we're going to create some cool features on this outer edge. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch. And what's interesting is that we can work with the original sketch surfaces that we had back with the 0, 0 point. So I could actually choose the YZ sketch surface. And that's directly in the middle of the part. But now I can look at that YZ surface being a right angle view. And so I'm actually looking at the YZ environment. I'm going to go ahead and draw a small rectangle here. And that small rectangle is going to be dimensioned. And so we're going to go ahead and dimension that rectangle 0.25 on the thickness. We're going to go ahead and dimension to the top line 0.25. And we're going to dimension from the center line out to the vertical line 0.375. And that's going to go the same on the opposite side as 0.375. And so now I've got a rectangle, but the reality is that this rectangle is in the middle of the part. It's not on the outer edge, but it's in the middle. But we can still use it to extrude and create some really cool features. We're going to go ahead and finish the sketch, and we're going to use the extrude tool. Now the extrude tool is asking me to select the profile because there's two halves of this rectangle. And the two halves are going to both be selected as tools that we're going to use. Now it automatically assumes we're going to cut it, and it's going to cut in one direction. And we could literally just cut this in one direction. But we can also mix it up, and instead of saying we're just going to do one direction, we could do both sides. And the distance on both sides could be cutting through all the part in both directions. So then we know that it's going to go all the way out to the outer edge. So now we've got a slot all the way through our object. So again, you can create the work plane and the sketch in the middle if you'd like, and then you can use a dual extrusion process. And we could have extruded one direction farther than the other. We'll choose OK, and now we've got a pretty cool slot through the middle that we can see all the way through. Now, one of the cool features that's found under the drop-down is called patterning. And so we have rectangle patterns, but we also have circular patterns. And that's what we're going to use here. Is we're going to use a circular pattern on this feature that we just created, that slot. So we're going to choose circular pattern. And a lot of times it'll come up and default to faces. And when you try to pick it, it's only going to select just one single face of that object that we just created. But realistically, we want to pick a feature. Now, what's the difference between bodies and components? Well, remember that when you create a 3D model, it turns into a body. When you create that body into an assembly, it be that you want it to then become a component or convert it to a component. In between the two is a feature, and this is a feature that's above the body because we've created a feature inside that body. So we're going to pick a feature of this slot. And then it wants to know what the axis is. So we're going to pick an axis. Now the axis could be a circular object, could be the actual axis line that we drew earlier. I'm just going to go ahead and pick the circle on top of the object here. And now it's created 3 iterations. We can go 4, 5. 5 looks pretty cool. Let's see what it looks like from the top. That looks pretty sweet. 6. Okay, remember when it does 6, it's equally dividing itself. There's 7, 8. So 8 adds a little bit more, but notice they're all equal distant. So we're going to go with 8, and we'll choose OK. Now the cool part is that we just created a series of slots all the way around the object in a pattern. But now, what if I wanted to drill a hole on the surface, on this angled surface? How do I get it there? How do I get a hole there? Well, one of the things that we can do is we can create, again, a plane along a surface. So I'm going to go ahead and choose construction plane. And I'm going to pick the XY plane. So it's going to go back to the original XY plane. Now, realistically, that XY plane could be through the middle. So I could, as an option, pick an axis perpendicular to a point, or an axis through 2 planes, or an axis through 2 points, or an axis through an edge, or an axis perpendicular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick an axis through a plane, or excuse me, an axis through... I'm going to pick the XY plane. So we're going to go ahead and pick axis through an edge. So I'm going to pick the axis, which is the center of the object, and we're going to pick the X edge. Oh, so it created an axis through that edge. Nice. But I need to create a plane. So we need to create a plane through 2 edges, or a plane through 3 points, or a plane tangent to a face and a point. Wow. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a plane on the XY axis, on the original XY axis. That's going to work out the best for us. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a plane, pick the XY axis, and I'm not going to put any distance into it. I'm just going to choose OK. So now I've got a plane on that environment, and I can choose a sketch. So I'm going to put a sketch on that same plane. Now with the sketch, I'm going to have to use a tool called projection, because I need to project the shape of the object onto this vertical plane. Because realistically, right now we're looking at the object this way. We created the plane here. There's a tool called projection, and we want to project that plane onto, or we want to project the surfaces onto that plane. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this top object here and project that plane. So I'm going to project. Why didn't that pop up? Did I not create a sketch? No, I'm in a sketch. We're good. And create, project. There we go. So I've got one selected. So I'm going to project this shape onto that plane. And you'll notice what happened is that it projected the data points. So it projected a point here, a point here, point here, point here. Well, I'm going to draw a line between those 2 points. So I get the angled surface onto that sketch. And now I'm going to finish the sketch. With the sketch being finished, I'm going to go ahead and create another construction plane, but it's going to be tangent. And one of the options is a tangent plane. So I'm going to pick a tangent plane on this object line. So that tangent plane is actually on the surface. Now if we need it to be an exact location where it's 0, 0'd onto that point, we'd probably want to make it tangent to 2 points, which are the projected sketch points that I just created. So we're going to go ahead and say OK, and I'm going to project. Excuse me, need to create a sketch on the plane first. Now I can project this line onto that plane. Boom. So now that that line is projected onto that sketch surface, I can create a point on that line. And that point is going to be in the midpoint, which it automatically popped up as. And that's where the hole is going to be. So I'm going to pick this location as the point, finish the sketch, create a hole on that point. And that hole is going to be, let's see here. How deep should it be? Let's take a look. From the front view, 2 inches is a little bit too deep. So let's go 1.75. Let's see here. 1.75. Still a little bit too deep. We're going to go 1.50. So we'll do 1.50 deep. 0.625 in diameter is fine. And so when we look at that, we're going to choose OK, and we have a hole created. Again, we can use the pattern tool to go ahead and create a circular pattern of the feature of the hole using the axis, and we can create 6 holes. So from the top, it looks like that, which looks pretty cool. From the side, ooh, something went wrong there. Ooh. I picked the wrong axis. Alright, so let's back this up. So to back it up, I'm going to go ahead and pick circular pattern back here on the editing line. And we're going to go ahead and edit that feature. I need to pick the axis on the object, not. So let's go ahead and pick this axis. Axis selected. Let me cross that out. Select. Axis. Ooh, I think that's what went wrong. Because if I look at it, maybe not. Maybe that's going to work. All right, let's check it. Compute option. Distance is full. And choose OK. Bingo. So there are 2 axes. The one axis is slightly off from the center line as the second axis. So we had to use the correct axis to project that. But you can see that these holes are perpendicular to that angled surface, which is our goal. So to create a really cool flying saucer, we need to be able to work with construction planes. Don't be intimidated by the different construction plane options. Just think through it. Think through what the option sounds like it needs. When I created that axis, it was actually drawing an axis, but I wanted to draw a plane. So I should have been in the top section for planes. The middle section is axes. The third section is just points. So if you break it down simply, you're going to be working primarily in the top 2 sections. Have a great day. We'll be talking to you soon. Bye now.